Hey friends, it's Corey from Hey Let's Make Stuff. In today's video, we are going to be doing another laser review. So I have reviewed a lot of lasers here on my YouTube channel, but one of the questions I get most often is what kind of laser can cut clear acrylic? I get this question a lot. And the answer is a CO2 laser. And up until now, all I have reviewed on my YouTube channel are diode lasers. So this is going to be my first CO2 laser review. It is the xTool P2S. It is quite a large laser, but I am very excited to share it with you today. I have actually had another CO2 laser for about 5 years. So I do have a Glowforge Pro and I really like it. I use it all the time. But I've been wanting to do a review of the xTool P2S because I know it has more features and capabilities than the Glowforge. So I reached out to xTool, who I have worked with in the past, and they were kind enough to send me their xTool P2S. And in this video, we're gonna go over basically everything you need to know about this laser before you buy it. Before we get started, the machine that I have is the xTool P2S. This is a slight upgrade over the xTool P2, but almost everything I'm going to be talking about in this video applies to the P2 and the P2S. So if you're looking at getting just that P2, basically everything I have to say here is going to apply to that as well. Now you'll notice that the laser is not here on this desk, and that is because it is huge and I just could not move it over here to my filming area. So I am going to be taking a bunch of B-roll and overlaying it in this video so you can see how it works as I go through all of the different features and capabilities of this machine. Let's start off by talking about the different types of lasers. And I apologize to those of you who have watched my other laser videos because I talk about this in basically every laser video, but this is especially important for this video. The xTool P2S is a CO2 laser. That means it uses CO2 with some sort of magic machinery to create the laser beam. All of the other machines I've reviewed on my blog have been diode lasers. This includes the xTool S1, the xTool M1 Ultra, the original xTool M1, the WeCreate Vista, the WeCreate Vision, the Glowforge Aura, and the Glowforge Spark. I've reviewed all of those here on my channel, and all of those are diode machines. So the xTool P2S is a different machine. It is a CO2 machine. So what is the difference between these two types of lasers? To start, CO2 lasers tend to be much larger and more powerful than diode lasers. Then there are diode lasers, which tend to be smaller, less powerful, but more economical. But the biggest difference between these two types of machines is the color of the laser beam itself. A CO2 laser, it is actually on the infrared spectrum. It's on a spectrum that we can't actually see. And that means that it can cut things that a diode laser cannot. A diode laser is on the visible light spectrum, so it actually has a blue laser beam. So if you want to cut clear acrylic, most blue acrylic, transparent acrylic, some mirrored acrylic, those sorts of things are not going to work in a diode laser, which means that you're going to need to upgrade to a CO2 laser. A CO2 laser, because of the color of the laser beam, can cut any color of acrylic. So if you have looked online and seen all of these really amazing, patterned acrylics or transparent acrylics, all sorts of really interesting acrylics, those can be cut in the CO2 laser, and the diode is either going to struggle to cut them or not cut them at all. Let's take a look at what that actually looks like. So in the overhead here, you can see that I have created a sort of name board. It might be a little bit hard to see, but it is engraved really beautifully here. Let's see if I can show you here. So I did this with my xTool P2S, and honestly, it looks really great here. This is basically like a little handwriting board. It's made with clear acrylic, and it has engraved beautifully. Then I have this very messy piece of acrylic here, but up here you can see where I have tried to cut clear acrylic using that 40-watt xTool S1. It basically charred. It did not cut all the way through. There's still a piece here, but basically it created a terrifying fire all the way as it was cutting around. It melts it just a bit, but even trying to engrave it, it's very messy, not nearly as tidy as the CO2 laser. So you can really see the difference here in a machine that is designed to engrave and cut clear acrylic versus a machine that's not designed to do that. I think this is pretty much the biggest reason that you might want to move up from a diode laser to a CO2 laser. The power on a diode laser does tend to be lower. However, xTool makes a 40-watt diode laser, the S1, and I really love it. However, even at that higher power, it doesn't cut those materials. So if you're thinking, I really want to cut those materials, let's talk about the xTool P2S and see if it's the right machine for you. Let's start by talking about the sort of unboxing process. The xTool P2S is shipped really nicely and packed really well. You are going to want to have at least one friend on hand, maybe two. This is a large machine. Once it's unboxed, it's 100 pounds. So you need to be able to lift 100 pounds with your partner to be able to get this on your table or wherever you're going to use it. With my machine, I got the riser, and this is my personal opinion, but if you can get the riser for basically any xTool machine, I highly recommend it because it expands the capabilities of your machine so much. Not only can you engrave taller projects, so you can engrave like wooden boxes, for example, but you can use their rotary tool. I have a whole video on using their rotary tool. It is amazing. It allows you to engrave tumblers and other objects. I engraved ornaments. You can really do a lot with that riser base. So I highly recommend that if you're buying any xTool laser that you get the matching riser base to go with it. The riser base, however, does mean that you're going to have to lift that very heavy machine even higher. So I have this on my Husky workbench, and you can see here that the riser base is quite tall, and then we had to set that big heavy laser on top of it. I have to say I struggled just a little bit with the weight of it, mostly because I am having some pain issues in my hands. I think two healthy people would be able to get it up there, no problem. But if you do have some sort of health issues or your partner does, you might want a third person to help you out. Setting up the laser is pretty easy. There are a bunch of screws you'll need to remove, some pieces of tape, that sort of thing, but it's mostly fully assembled. One thing you will need to do is add antifreeze and water to the back. I didn't have to do this with my Glowforge Pro, so it did make me a little bit nervous, but in the end, it really wasn't difficult. In the Quick Start Guide, there's a little chart that helps you know how much antifreeze to water you need to add to the back of the machine based on the lowest temperature in your region. So basically, I thought of it as if my power goes out and my machine is left without a heater for a few days, how cold is it going to get here? And then using that information, I decided how much antifreeze and how much water to add to the back of the machine. It really wasn't difficult, but it was an extra step that I found a little bit intimidating. So once you get to that step, don't worry, it's not too hard. You just have to do a little bit of math and then you'll be ready to go. Like I said, the machine is quite large. So I'm gonna give you a shot here to show you the xTool P2S versus my Glowforge. If you know the size of a Glowforge, you can see that it is a bigger machine, especially when set on that riser base. The machine is a little less than 40 inches wide, it's 25 inches deep, and about 10.5 inches tall. Then you'll add another 8 inches or so if you get the riser base as well. You will need another 8 or so inches in the back to account for the vent pipe, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. And then you'll need another 20 inches above the machine so that you can open that lid all the way. Now let's take a look at sort of some of the parts of the machine that you should be familiar with. In my Glowforge, the laser tube is visible in the back of the machine. However, with the xTool P2S, it is hidden in a panel in the back. I'm not actually going to open up this panel because I already have put all the screws back in, but the laser tube is back there, and that again is what creates that infrared laser to do your cutting, scoring, and engraving. Then you have the laser module, which you'll see inside the machine, and basically this can move around on these different rails so that it can process your material. Within the laser module, there are a bunch of mirrors and lenses, some of which you will need to keep maintained and clean so that you get good laser projects. This machine has quite a large laser bed. You're going to be able to process projects that are 23.6 inches wide by 12 inches deep. In the bottom, we have removable and reconfigurable slats. And I have to say, of all of my xTool machines, this is my favorite option because we have these built-in rail holders and the slats stick in there. A lot better than the other xTool machines, and I like this configuration a lot. The slats allow for airflow underneath your project when you are cutting, and this is very important because it helps reduce flare-ups and the possibility of fires. This piece up here in the back houses two cameras, and these cameras will take pictures of your material so that you can accurately place your images onto your material in xTool Creative Space. Then in the back of the machine, we have that vent pipe. Again, I'll talk about that here in just a minute, as well as a bunch of connectors so that you can plug in things like this USB dongle, which connects to the air purifier, which I will also talk about here in a minute. Then importantly, I wanted to point out that on the left side of the laser, there are two connectors, one for an Ethernet cable and one for a USB-C cable. When you connect this laser to xTool Creative Space for the first time, you need to connect it by a cable. And I spent way too long trying to figure out which cable would connect to the back of the machine instead of these nice little connectors, which are very easy to access on the front of the machine. So if you get this laser, just remember that they're there on the left side of the machine. You don't have to go looking through all of the connectors on the back of the machine. All right, we can go back to that vent pipe now and talk about venting. All lasers need to be vented. When you are cutting and scoring and engraving, you are basically vaporizing and creating all of this dust and debris and smoke, and that needs to be vented out of your laser and not into your craft space. So there are two ways to do this. The first is to use a window. You can actually just throw the end of the vent pipe out the window, maybe put a blanket or some cardboard around so that debris doesn't come back in, and vent it that way. That is the free option, and it totally works. I am not near a very good window for this, so I do have a window above this particular machine, but the way it opens, there is an interior screen, so I can't get this out the window very easily. So instead, I'm using an air filter. I have talked about this in other videos. I am using the new xTool AP2 air filter. I love it. I didn't realize you could love an air filter. I love this air filter so much. So I have my vent pipe connected to the AP2, and the AP2 is basically pulling all of that gunk out of my machine and into the filter. This filter has 6-way filtering. The first filter is washable in the sink, so you don't have to continue to replace it. Honestly, it blows every other filter out of the water, and if you have it in your budget, I highly recommend it. Speaking of filters, let's talk all about safety. There are quite a few safety features on this machine that make me very comfortable using it in my craft space. First up, it is fully enclosed and it has a tinted lid so you can watch your project being processed without having to wear any special eyewear. Second, you need a USB key to operate it, and this is one of those things that plugs into the back, and it's basically just a little dongle that if you don't have it plugged in, the machine won't run. So if you have people in your life that you don't want using your laser, kids, whatever, you could just hide that USB key and the machine becomes inoperable. I think this small thing is just really helpful in making sure that your laser isn't being used without you being there. Third, there is an AI fire detection system. If a fire is detected, the whole machine shuts down. Fourth, the lid actually locks while it's processing. In my 9 lasers that I have owned, this is the only machine to do that, and I like it. All of the other machines do stop processing once you lift the lid. However, this one won't let you lift the lid in the first place, and I think that's even better because it doesn't allow all of that smoke and everything to just escape if you open the lid. You have your filter running, or maybe you're venting out of a window, and that allows for all of that smoke, dust, and debris to get out of your machine before you open the lid. Finally, there's a big fat emergency button on the back right of this machine. I do wish this was a little bit closer to the front. I don't love the idea of having to lean over or lean around a laser that is having a problem to hit that emergency button. However, I am glad it's there. It's quite large, so you can just whack it and the machine will stop. As with all my lasers, I also take other safety precautions. I have a fire blanket and a fire extinguisher really close by, just in case things get out of hand. Now let's talk about what this machine can cut and engrave. So like I said, the big one here is acrylic. You can cut all sorts of different colors of acrylic, clear acrylic, transparent, all of these things that you can't cut on a diode laser. But of course, there are other things as well. As far as cutting goes, you can cut all sorts of types of wood, plywood, leather, MDF, felt, paper. There are just a lot of things that you can actually cut. As far as engraving goes, you can basically engrave everything I talked about before, except maybe paper. I don't know how you'd engrave paper, maybe. But there are even more things that you can engrave, and that includes metal specifically designed for engraving. So you can do that with powder-coated tumblers, those sorts of things. There's also an engraving coating that you can put on metal objects to engrave them. Then there are a bunch of natural materials, slate, tile, marble, all sorts of things that you can engrave as well. And you can also engrave glass, which you can't do with a diode laser, so you can make all sorts of really cool projects using the P2S. Now we'll touch quickly on software. There are 2 different programs you can use with this laser. I have only ever used xTool Creative Space. It works really well. They have improved this software by leaps and bounds from when it first came out. If you go back and watch my early M1 video, I'm like, it's not so great. And now it is probably one of my favorite programs I work with. Their engineers and their programmers have really done a good job of creating a very solid software, especially for beginners. Then, if you want, you can also use Lightburn. I have never personally used Lightburn, and that's because I have found that the software that comes with all of these lasers has been adequate for my needs. But if you are someone who wants to work more on design and that sort of thing, you might want to take a look at Lightburn as well. Now let's talk a little bit about the difference between the P2S and the P2. These machines are really similar, and at the time of filming of this video, they are actually priced the same at $3,999. So honestly, I would go with the P2S just because you're going to get a few more benefits than you would get with the P2. My guess is that they're phasing out the P2 and the P2S will just become the CO2 laser that they are selling. A difference here is in speed. So on the Y-axis, it cuts at the same speed, but the X-axis, it has been basically doubled in speed. So that depends really on what you're cutting and engraving. However, you are going to notice a bit of a speed improvement on most projects. It also has a slightly stronger air assist. So I recently did a video on using air assist, and you can go and watch that if you'd like, but basically air assist blows a concentrated stream of air as your project is processing to help your laser cut cleaner, get rid of dust and debris, and prevent fires. Using air assist for most projects is important, and this one is just a little bit more powerful than the previous version. The exhaust fan has also been improved by about 60%, so it is going to be more effective at pulling all of that dust and debris out of your machine and into your vent pipe, and either out the window or into your filter. Then there have also been some camera improvements. Instead of 2 standard cameras, we have 2 AI-powered cameras. And these cameras really do help with processing curved surfaces. So if you watch my video about how to engrave a 40-ounce tumbler, you might remember that it makes a big difference how close that laser is to your project. And if you're engraving a 40-ounce tumbler, the large part of the tumbler is much closer to the laser than the smaller part of the tumbler. This also happens in curved surfaces. So for example, if you wanted to engrave a wine bottle, the large part of the bottle is going to be closer to the laser than as it goes down to the neck of the bottle. These AI cameras make that curved processing a lot easier. This is actually not something I've done a lot of myself, but I do have it on my list of videos to research and make in case you want to do curved surfaces, so be on the lookout for that. Now, like I said, these 2 lasers are currently priced the same. It might be different when you go online to buy one. The base price for the xTool P2S is $5,499, and for the P2 it's $4,999. However, both of those are on sale right now for $3,999. With any xTool that you might want to buy, I highly recommend waiting for one of their sales. Their machines are rarely full price, so definitely make sure you're catching them during a sale so you get the best deal. So would I recommend this laser? Absolutely. There is very little that I dislike on here and a lot I like. I've used it quite a bit for making things for my Etsy side hustle, Chapter and Craft, and honestly, it's very easy to use, and overall, I really like it. That being said, be on the lookout in the next few months for a machine comparison. I'm going to be comparing the Glowforge Pro, the xTool P2S, and one other machine that I don't have yet, so that you can choose the best CO2 laser for your needs and budget. All right, friends, I hope you found this video overview of the xTool P2S helpful. I know this is a little bit different than the diode machines, so if you have any questions about using this laser, please leave those down in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them. If you found this video helpful in a buying decision, please let me know and give this video a like. Follow my channel for more laser reviews and content. I'll see you next time.